Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 6th day of November 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first on the hazardous weather graphic, we've got, we'll start out way out west there, St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast. That's a continuation of a coastal flood advisory that's out for tonight into tomorrow. And that's for sea levels running 4 to 6 feet above normal. Could cause some minor beach erosion. And then on the Yukon Delta coast there, continuation of the coastal flood warning for the south coast of the Seward Peninsula. Also the north side there. And that's out for tonight through tomorrow as well. And then inland areas, Fairbanks area, central interior, up to the Kobuk Valley, east and northeast, across the upper Yukon Valley, southeastern Brooks Range. Winter storm warnings out through 6 a.m. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Saturday. And look for an additional 3 to 5 inches of snow in some areas. We'll have more, some areas will see less, but that's out for at least through tonight until tomorrow morning. And then it'll probably end, or, it'll kick it out longer. And then the eastern upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country, as well as the central eastern Alaska Range and the east Susitna Valley. That's a winter storm watch for our next system coming in, and that's out for Sunday night, and into Monday. In the case of Susitna Valley, we're looking for possible heavy snow actually for all the areas there. And Susitna Valley could see 10 to 18 inches. Again, that's for Sunday through Monday time frame. And up there in the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country, looking for about anywhere from 8 to 12 inches possible during that time frame. That's with the next storm coming up. Again, tomorrow will be kind of in between. And other than that, no other watches, warnings, or advisories, except for the central western Arctic coast, continuation there of the coastal flood advisory, also out tonight into tomorrow. And the northwest coast, coastal flood warning remains out as well. And off to satellite imagery, you can see that low that's produced the strong winds, not as strong as yesterday, but still quite a fetch from the southwest across the northern Bering, right up through the Bering Strait for the continuation of the coastal flood advisories and then the coastal flood warnings that are out. But that low pulling up and slowly weakening, and that pushing a fair amount of snow into the central interior. During the last 12 hours, Fairbanks has picked up about 6 to 8 inches of snowfall, and upper Chena area 4 to 6 inches, give or take, as well as Indian Mountain back to the west-northwest there. About 4 to 6 inches of snow there, and that's in the last 12 hours, ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon. And then that other areas, though, were lighter. Probably southern slopes of the Brooks Range had a fair amount, but the north slope, it was lighter. Gusty winds, though, up to 35 miles an hour reported at Umiat Airfield, and even stronger through the passes of the western Alaska Range, anywhere from 40 to 55 miles per hour there. In the western Brooks Range or the long mountains, but northwest coast, lighter winds, still pretty gusty. Kivalina, let's see, they were reporting gusts to 47 miles an hour earlier today, and Nome had gusts around 30 miles an hour, which was down from the 51 mile an hour wind gusts they had overnight last night. And still some showers rolling into the St. Lawrence Island area in the form of rain, also rain for the Seward Peninsula, with the warmer temperatures into the Kuskokwim Valley. McGrath reporting some rain or light rain at times today. And that tapering off and ending as you head out to the southwest there. And then the light snow over Cook Inlet, really hard to see the clouds associated with that more earlier on up into the Susitna Valley. And then you can see the cloud shield there spreading cirrus up into the eastern Aleutians. That's kind of along the weakening boundary has now become a warm front, as you can see, with a narrow band of precipitation there. But that links up to the next system there, 1,011 millibar low south of the central Aleutians. That'll be rolling up. Otherwise, you can see the still a pretty good gradient there. Good southwest flow right across the Bering Sea. Tightens up as you get north of St. Lawrence Island. And again, gusty winds anywhere from 40 to 60 miles an hour, becoming much lighter over the southwest part of the state in Bristol Bay. High pressure, light winds, and variably cloudy skies for the Copper River Basin. Some light snow moving into the northern Panhandle. Light snow all afternoon at Juneau. today, but amount's not all that heavy. Drier to the south. And for tonight, high pressure holds and actually redevelops over southern Alaska, and that's going to shut the precipitation off and increase the clearing a little bit here for Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, back into the Kuskokwim Valley, and maybe up to the Susitna Valley. Westerly Copper River Basin should be mostly clear with light winds. And snow will end over the northern panhandle there. Excuse me, with maybe a lingering shower or two down toward Dixon Entrance, but generally dry with light winds there. Out west, you can see the system, warm front approaching the Alaska Peninsula there to the south of the peninsula, and that deepening low center. And we'll see tomorrow that moves right up to, say, Chignik or so, somewhere between Sandpoint and Chignik, makes landfall on the Alaska Peninsula in the mid-afternoon hours, deepening about 995 millibars. But the gradient between that low center and that Arctic high, 1,035 millibars over the Yukon, with most of the gradient there over the far western, right across Kodiak Island, actually. So increasing winds, possible storm force winds rolling in there with increasing rain, heavy at times, probably by mid-morning through the afternoon, and that all working up into Cook Inlet, some mix of precipitation as that pushes northward. Farther north you are, better chance of snow, but warmer temperatures with that. Looks like rain becoming moderate to heavy with increasing winds. Southern Cook Inlet, Kachemak and Kamishak Bay, and otherwise eastern interior south of the Brooks Range, not a bad day. Dry with some clearing, and the panhandle stays fair under high pressure. Weak system brings some light rain into the central Aleutians, sending back to Shimia, and that low tracking now just off the western Arctic coast. So periods of snow along the central and western coast down into the western Brooks Range, as well actually all of the Brooks Range. And for the outlook on Sunday, second day of the weekend, see that system pulls up into Prince William Sound, and cold air coming back down around the backside of that. So snowfall levels will crash back down to sea level for Cook Inlet, definitely the Susitna Valley, Matanuska Valley, and all the way down to probably the southern Kenai Peninsula as well later in the day. But precipitation amounts will be lightening up at that time, but still a widespread area of snow across southern central Alaska over toward and north of Eagle. And then gale and storm force winds move on to the north coast of the panhandle there with heavy rain, lighter rain and less wind, but all increasing deteriorating conditions there as that system pushes in and the high gives off a little bit. Next system bringing rain into the western Bering Sea and the Aleutians with weak ridging to the east there for a nice day for the Fox Islands and Alaska Peninsula. And look for some snow showers for St. Lawrence Island. Lows for tonight. Quite a range over the eastern interior, anywhere from 5 to 10 below to 5 to 15 above, and then markedly warm as you head west into the 30s, staying above freezing just about all of western Alaska, lower 40s Alaska Peninsula, and for the panhandle, mid to upper teens north to lower 30s south, and teens to lower 20s south central Alaska. Highs for tomorrow. In the mid-teens for the Copper River Basin, again, high pressure basically controlling the weather for the eastern side of things, and for the southeast coast as well, lower 30s northern southeast coast to lower 40s down toward Dixon Entrance and out along the coastline. Pushing 50 for Kodiak Island tomorrow afternoon, mid to upper 40s Alaska Peninsula, upper 30s, lower 40s Bristol Bay, mid 40s for the Aleutians, upper 30s St. Lawrence Island, mid 30s for the Seward Peninsula area. Pretty mild on the Arctic coast, upper 20s to lower 30s, and 20s and lower 30s for the Tanana Valley. Lows the following morning down to 15 to 25 for the central interior there, 20s southern Alaska, mid 30s down toward Homer, Port Moller, and mid to upper 20s for most of the panhandle, near 0 or 0 to 10 above now, Copper River Basin up into the eastern interior, near 40 for the Aleutians, and mid to upper teens, central eastern Arctic coast, milder to the west. For the afternoon highs, not much higher than your lows there, especially St. Lawrence Island, mid-30s, about 2 degrees warmer than the forecast low for Gamble. And lower 40s Bristol Bay, mid-40s Alaska Peninsula, upper 40s Central Aleutians, Kodiak Island, mid-40s Southern Panhandle, mid-30s to the north, and upper 20s for the Copper River Basin, and in the 20s for the remainder of the interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Let's take a look at the flying weather for Saturday morning. We will be dealing with a system that will exit the North Slope, but continuing clouds through much of the mainland. We will see another system approaching the Alaska Peninsula and cross into the North Gulf. But otherwise, for Saturday morning, IFR conditions scattered throughout much of the western mainland into the Brooks Range. and down through the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and Aleutians, with marginal conditions touching into the Panhandle. For Saturday afternoon, there's the low pressure system coming into Bristol Bay region, spreading IFR conditions down through much of the southwest and into Prince William Sound, down through portions of the Gulf region and out through the Aleutians, some marginal conditions along the Brooks Range as well. For Sunday morning, as that low crosses into the Gulf, we'll see some IFR conditions again through much of the southwest and into the Seward Peninsula and down through the North Gulf, and marginal conditions there in the Panhandle, IFR conditions in Fort Yukon area associated with overnight low clouds and fog, otherwise marginal conditions along the North Slope, and scattered areas of IFR conditions on the Aleutians. For Sunday afternoon, again, that system now crossing into the northeast Gulf Coast into Canada, IFR conditions through much of the southeast interior and through the Panhandle, with scattered areas of IFR conditions in the western part of the mainland, Seward Peninsula, YK Delta, and up into the North Slope. Past conditions for Saturday: Anaktuvuk, marginal conditions decreasing to IFR conditions, especially on the south entrance. Watch that. And for Adigan, much the same, marginal decreasing to IFR conditions. And Lake Clark, Merrill, marginal early IFR conditions by late in the day on Saturday. Rainy went for marginal conditions up that way. Same for Windy. Isabel, marginal, improving to VFR conditions. Mentasta, VFR as well. Tanita, marginal. Portage, marginal to IFR, and especially marginal IFR conditions mainly in the east entrance, marginal on the west entrance. Chilkoot and White get VFR conditions, nice place to fly down there on Saturday. Freezing levels for Saturday morning: freezing at the surface, crosses the western part of the mainland down to the southwest and crosses the southern end of the mainland and down through the Panhandle. You have to get into the Gulf to see elevated freezing levels to 2,000 feet, and that crosses over into the Bering down through the Aleutians. And for icing conditions for Saturday, I went for a large area of isolated moderate. It did look like the most favorable moisture and temperatures for icing was above anywhere between 6,000 and 10,000 feet, but mainly up around 10,000 feet, so be leery of that with the changing conditions. Jet stream on Saturday, 155 knots crossing the southern end of the Panhandle, otherwise 145 knots as you get into the central and northern part of the Panhandle, otherwise very strong jet across much of the southern mainland, coming into the western YK Delta region, otherwise around high pressure system far south in the Gulf, otherwise weak low pressure system in the northern Bering. For 9,000 foot winds on Saturday, again high pressure well south in the Gulf, 40 to 50 knots coming across in westerly direction across much of the mainland, and in northerly direction as you get into the Panhandle with 40 to 35 knots there, and weak low pressure system in the eastern Panhandle, 75 knots with that system approaching the Alaska Peninsula, 75 knots in a southwesterly direction. 3,000 foot winds again for that low pressure system, again down around 3,000 feet. 75 knot winds around that low pressure system, otherwise southerly winds coming into westerly winds across the mainland, 40 to 45 knots there, and light and variable across the southeast interior and Panhandle. For turbulence on Wednesday, below 6,000 feet across much of the interior and Brooks Range, otherwise below 4,000 feet across the Kodiak Island.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snyder, and joining me today is Cindy Preller. She's the Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska Region's National Weather Service. And Cindy, we hear a lot about tsunamis in the news, probably a lot more than we used to, but let's remind everybody, what is a tsunami?
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Sure.
Tsunami is basically, it's really simple. It's just a disturbance in the water column. So the entire water column from the seafloor to the sea surface is disturbed by something major, usually a major earthquake. But it can also be a volcanic eruption, even an asteroid. Landslide is especially dangerous.
Okay, so if I'm sitting in my bathtub and I drop a bath toy, that could be a bathtub tsunami.
It is absolutely a bathtub tsunami.
Okay, very good. So Alaska is one of the states, or maybe the state, with the greatest amount of coastline. So tsunamis are a pretty major risk here in Alaska. Who is most at risk?
Yeah, Alaska is significant. We actually make most of the Pacific's tsunamis.
Wow, okay.
On the Aleutian Trench. And it's where the Pacific Plate is subducting underneath the American Plate. And we produce some very large, great quakes. And of course, the most at risk is the Aleutian Trench.
Okay.
But that extends into south central Alaska as well. They're at huge risk. And then southeast Alaska's risk is really mostly landslide focused.
Okay. Are there any places along the Alaskan coastline that don't have a tsunami risk, or at least a very, very low risk?
Absolutely. The Bering Sea's risk is very low, and the Arctic's risk is very low as well.
Okay, so when we're talking about tsunami dangers, those are places that need to be monitored, but probably not really.
No, I
No
mean,
big
I
deal.
won't say never.
Yeah, sure.
Because I know
You can't.
better.
Science knows better.
Right. So,
Very good.
near to never.
Okay. Well, let's just say you're on the coast anywhere in Alaska. What are warning signs that tsunami dangers are threatening you right now?
This is super important because Alaska's greatest risk, especially out on the Aleutians and South Central, is a near-field tsunami. And then, of
Okay.
course, the landslides in Southeast, it's even more intense because we
So
can't.
shorter warning times.
No warning time.
Okay.
The earthquake is the warning.
Okay.
And that is the most important thing for anybody to remember. The water can arrive in less than 2 minutes.
2 minutes, wow.
Yeah, at the National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, we need to get the warning out in 5 minutes. So for those near-field tsunamis, it's the earthquake is the warning. So
Okay.
if you feel shaking,
Okay.
and of course the first thing you do is drop, cover, and hold,
Right.
and you need to start counting
Okay.
slowly to 20.
The right way. How do you do that?
Oh, I teach kids to do it with their favorite things. So
Okay.
1 chocolate, 2 chocolate, 3 chocolate, but you
Chocolate's
can
good.
count anything you like.
Okay.
And if you're thinking of something happy, that helps.
Okay.
Especially helps kids, but it'll help your
So
psyche.
you don't speed up because you're getting stressed out. I see.
Right. It actually lowers your heart rate.
Interesting.
You know, so
Okay.
if you think of something you love and practice that. So you're in an earthquake, you're under the table, you're next to the ocean,
Okay.
right?
Right.
This is important if you're next to the ocean.
Okay.
If you're not next to the ocean, don't worry about it. Just stay in place under cover.
And you're talking about a mile, a quarter mile? What's close?
A mile, even a couple miles.
Okay.
You know, our rule of thumb used to be a mile inland was safe, but the last few tsunamis have taught us otherwise.
Okay.
So, yeah, you know, in Japan we had inundation up to 10 miles.
Right.
So,
Okay. And that was a big quake.
That was a big
So
quake.
you have a quake, you're counting slowly to 20.
to 20.
What's next?
And if you get to 20 and it's still shaking, you need to evacuate.
Okay.
And that is, that's scary
Yeah.
because you're
That's a big quake.
evacuating in a live event that's still shaking. You know, 1964 shook for 4.5 minutes. Indonesia shook for 12 minutes.
Wow. Right.
Japan, I think, shook for 6. I'm not sure of that, but it was long. Anyway, more
Right.
than 20 seconds.
And that's a sign of a very major earthquake, the worst.
Well, 20 seconds is a magnitude 7, so that's
Okay.
not the worst. But what a magnitude 7 can do is trigger a landslide.
Okay.
And those landslides might be a submarine landslide, so you won't see it, you won't hear it, you won't know it, and then the water's moving.
Okay.
So that's really, really, really dangerous. That's what happened in 64 first. Seward, Valdez, Whittier all had landslides first.
Okay. And when you're talking about the water is a warning sign too. What happens with the water that gives you a very easy visual sign that something's changing?
Not guaranteed. It might go out. It might go way out really fast enough to leave the fish behind. But that's not guaranteed. It might just be a fast flood instead.
Okay.
So either way, if it's acting like a super fast rising tide, faster than a tide should rise,
Right.
get out of there.
Okay.
And if it goes out really fast, get out of there.
Yeah.
You know, we lost a lot of lives because people will go check out the new tide pools or
Sure.
pick up fish or shells or, you know, so, and it should feel weird.
Right.
You know, it should be weird.
So pay attention to those natural warning signs and how you feel, because those are maybe the only clues you have.
Right, and you know, sound also. You can hear a tsunami. It'll sound like a roaring train, maybe.
Okay.
Or it might sound silent because the water's been pulled out.
Right.
And that's pretty weird. Imagine camping
Yeah.
at night
Yeah.
near the beach, and all of a sudden you don't hear the ocean anymore.
That would be different.
That would be weird. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you also might hear blowing bubbles, and that's actually from the pressure that's blowing the air out from the sand grains, rock
Interesting.
grains. So if you hear blowing bubbles, that's a little weird.
Okay.
Or clinking rocks, you know, like a rain stick. So those are the sound signs. So the visual is rushing in or rushing out, and roaring especially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work to get people and keep people aware of what the tsunami warning signs are and what their risks are around Alaska. And there's a website that can help them do that. Where can they go online to get more information for their school, their home, their church, their business?
Oh, there's several. The National Tsunami Warning Center has a website as well, and the easiest way to look that up is just NTWC.
NTWC.
The
Okay.
URL is not intuitive at all.
Okay.
There's also ready.alaska.gov. The state of Alaska has a lot of helpful stuff. Preparedness kits. They have everything you need to get ready.
Okay.
And then for teachers and others, there's a wonderful curriculum called Alaska Tsunami Education Program.
Alaska Tsunami Education Program. Okay.
And that's AKwx.
AKwx. Okay, very good. Those are really good tips to get more information and search that out and help your own community stay safe with the threat of tsunamis around Alaska. Next time we come back and talk to you some more about the Tsunami Ready program and get more in depth and how people can learn more about the risks and what to do here in Alaska. So thank you for joining us today, Cindy. And next time on Alaska Weather Facts, more on tsunamis around Alaska. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Coastal water forecasts. Small craft advisories there on the south coast of the Panhandle due to 10-foot seas. Otherwise, winds will be northerly, 20 to 25 knots. And then north 15 becoming light easterly there, 10 to 15 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast and extreme northern Panhandle. Lynn Canal winds 20 knots from the north, and north 10 for Stevens Passage, northwest 15, Clarence Strait. Moving on to Sunday. And we'll see that, let's see. There we go. Sunday, full gales come into the coast of the Panhandle. That frontal boundary sliding northward off the coast. So 40 knot south winds with 15 to 16 foot seas for the south coast. North coast winds 40 to 45 knots there from the southwest to southeast. Seas approaching 20 feet. And you can see the storm force easterlies there for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Clarence Strait, southwest southeast winds 30 knots, seas 6 feet. Southeast winds increasing to 25 knots for Stevens Passage, and south winds at 20 for Lynn Canal. Prince William Sound for Saturday, east winds 20 knots, seas 3 feet. Southeast winds 25 knots for the North Gulf Coast and the Barren Islands with seas at 6 feet. And Kamishak Bay, east winds 30 knots. Small craft advisories also for southern Cook Inlet. Northeast winds at 30 knots with 7-foot seas. And north at 20 for northern Cook Inlet with 5-foot seas. And for Sunday, second day of the weekend, you see some storm force winds making the scene here for Kamishak Bay across Augustine Island, right out of the west at 50 knots. And that goes right across the Barren Islands as well, 14 to 16-foot seas. Gale warnings now for southern Cook Inlet, northwest winds at 35 knots. Small craft advisories northern Cook Inlet for 25-knot winds out of the north. And from the North Gulf Coast, 45-knot winds, full gales from the south-southwest, seas 17 feet. Prince William Sound, east winds 40 knots with 10-foot seas. Kodiak Island, east-southeasterlies tomorrow at 30 knots, and gales from Sitkinak to Castle Cape for southerlies sustained at 40 knots. Otherwise, Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, south side of the Alaska Peninsula, west winds 25 knots, 17-foot seas. And Bristol Bay winds east 30 knots with 6-foot seas, but only northeasterlies at 20 knots for the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. And then those will swing around to the west at about 30 knots. There are seas building up to 10 feet on the northern Alaska Peninsula. And the Pacific side, though, from Cape Sarachev right up to Sitkinak, gale warnings. West winds 35 knots, even stronger winds in store for Kodiak Island on Sunday. Westerlies 40 to 45 knots, seas up to 18 feet, higher gusts out of the eastern bays. And for Fox Islands tomorrow, northwest winds 20 to 25 knots, strongest on the Pacific side of the islands. AKwx, westerlies 20 knots, and southwest 30 knots from Kiska to Shemya and Attu, as well as Amchitka. And for those islands on Sunday, almost storm force winds coming in, 45 knots from the south-southwest from Shemya to Amchitka Island, with seas just under 20 feet. And AKwx, southwest 40 to 45 knots, 12 to 15 foot seas. Small craft advisories for the Fox Islands, southwest winds 25 knots with seas, or 25 to 30 knots with seas 8 to 13 feet. Southwest coast, Yukon Delta coast winds laying down, south 15 tomorrow, but south of Nunivak Island, southeast at about 20. Light winds from the north of the Pribilofs, but seas still running at 9 feet. St. Matthew Island, south 15, 11 foot seas. St. Lawrence Island, southerlies 25 knots, seas 12 feet. Those come down to 20 knots on Sunday there for St. Lawrence Island and St. Matthew Island and the Pribilof, St. Paul and St. George. Southwest winds 25 knots, and those will turn westerly into the southwest coast, but will be about 30 knots as they blow into Kuskokwim Bay. Yukon Delta coast west at 20, seas 5 feet, but Norton Sound north 25 for small craft advisories there. And for the Arctic coast, let's see, from Wales up to Cape Beaufort, gale warnings for Saturday. Southwest sustained 35 knots with 12-foot seas, and small craft advisories on the west side there to the central coast. Southwest 25 to 30 knots. Brisk wind advisories, eastern stretch of the coastline for southwest winds at 25. And then Sunday, swing the winds around to the northeast for the eastern and central coast at 25 knots. And small craft advisories right down on the west side as well, but Cape Beaufort to Wales, now down to 15 knots from the north-northeast with 4-foot seas. For tonight, again, winter storm warning continues for the central interior, Fairbanks, and those areas until 6 a.m. Saturday morning for another 3 to 5 inches of snow. Coastal flood advisories continues for St. Lawrence Island, coastal flood warning for the Seward Peninsula and northwest coast, coastal flood advisory western Arctic coast. Otherwise, next storm comes rolling up tomorrow, and heavy wind and rain, and then pushes eastward into the Panhandle on Sunday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.